After losing all control, Arya had gone east for a number of reasons, most of them official matters, but to be completely honest with herself, she was there to be with him. Eragon gave her the most beautiful gift he could ever give her, with the intention of falling even more into her graces. Silly of him. She had already surrendered to his charms. But even then, after that incredible proof of love and devotion, she felt apart from him, because inadvertently he had found another way of keeping her at a distance. His obliviousness usually amused her, a few times angered her, but at that moment it just saddened her. She was lying on her new bed feeling the breeze blowing from outside. The river flowed down its course, lulling her with its soft and constant current. And the most special detail of that place was coming through the open windows near the headboard of the bed. The smell of white lilies that was stronger and sweeter than any other kind. And maybe it was the wine talking, but all of that formed in her mind the image of his arms closing around her body, yet he wasn't there. She could almost feel his warmth, but he was still inside his mountain, away from her, high in the eyrie. When he showed her his gift, she first had the impression he would share her new home with her. She should have known he wouldn't, since he had made it clear he wasn't going to break his promise of not asking for more. Living together would definitely be a barrier to their previous agreement. She didn't regret proposing it, or better said, imposing it, for she would always be the master of their game, and they both knew she needed to have the control in order to keep going forward. But his hesitancy in approaching her could be worse than his possible urge to have her. Fernan. Arya called. The dragon was resting in the shelter beautifully crafted next to the treehouse in stone and vines. Saphira kept him company. Yes, my dear. Please, may you ask Saphira to link me with Eragon. Are you all right? He probably sensed her sadness, but she felt as he nudged Saphira mentally. I just need to talk with him. Without any more words from neither of the dragons, Arya felt her mind being led to his through the few miles that separated them until she found herself surrounded by his mental gardens. She could have done this by herself, but it would be a waste of her energy just to reach him. Then try to get through his walls would be another challenge. To be carefully delivered to him by his partner was a much more polite and comfortable way to do it. She watched as he disarmed his traps so she wouldn't be pulled in and endangered like she was 10 years before. Arya extended the same courtesy by toning down the hypnotic effects of her music. Are you all right, Arya? If she was asked that question enough times, she would finally get to the truth, that in fact she was not all right. She felt lonely. I just needed to talk with you. About what? She didn't quite know. I don't know. His amusement filled their minds, and she could tell he was laughing with his physical body. She could also tell he was in bed, ready to enter his waking dreams, and a slur. To entertain her, he started to play the memories of that night that she didn't participate. It was when the dwarves had a drinking competition, and Roran decided to join in, losing miserably and spiting ale all around. It worked, for soon she felt relaxed and at ease. He kept going and showed a joke told by Murtagh that was so filthy it made the other riders flinch and laugh out loud. But what was really funny for Eragon wasn't the joke itself, but the fact that Rhaenyra seemed helplessly oblivious to its meaning. And all the others were disgusted enough to refuse to explain it to him. The unmistakably sound of Eragon's laugh in the memory made her smile fondly. I see you feel a little better already. Maybe I should keep going with the dirty jokes, he observed. The joke didn't do it for me. You did. I'm glad I amuse you. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you just annoy me. With her inhibition severely unstable, she opened her memories to show him when she watched from across the hall as the red-headed woman danced toward him and explored his chest with her prying hands while speaking in his ear. She didn't hold back the memory of her reaction at the time that was a step in their direction stopped by Avelina, who wisely put herself in the way. Arya, he protested. Nothing happened. She didn't respond and kept playing the memory in which Avelina, in a humorous way, pointed it out that it was a common occurrence, and soon Eragon would send Helena away. The words had just come out of her mouth and Eragon gave a step back, waiting for Helena to shrug and dance towards someone else like nothing had happened. It annoys me nevertheless. Can we get back to the part where I amuse you? He hoped in a cautious voice. Arya felt bad. She had put on his shoulders all the responsibility of making her feel secure and cared for, when she wouldn't even speak of it to him. How fair was it? I don't blame you for having a life here that's independent from me. I never gave you much to hold on to. It's also all right if you are mad at me for behaving this way. A few seconds went by before he could respond, and Arya noticed his foggy mind was charging its price. I'm most definitely not having an independent life. And I'm not mad, only because you are reasonable enough to trust me, right? He said in a firm voice, even if a little groggy as he was trying to teach her a lesson, but in a loving way. Arya smiled. I do. All right then. I'll take this episode as a sign that you care. I wish you really knew that. Her mental voice was a quiet and soft plead as her heart ached, a plead for him to close the distance as much as possible. To keep her within his reach at all times, because that was the reason she had gone east for. Arya thought that it was exactly that what she had to say to him, but didn't know how. Somehow it was caught up inside her throat, and she suspected it had something to do with the alarming feeling of vulnerability that came along with the thought. Some of that must have passed through their link, for his mind felt somber suddenly as he had made a mistake, and he said in a conciliating tone, "In the first light, meet me in the garden. For now, go to the study, third shelf from the top, fifth book from the left. I wrote it for you. Just for you." Arya rushed down the stairs to the best of her tipsy abilities to grab the book he mentioned and settled herself on the couch, still navigating his vast mind. She felt his attention dimming a little, and he soon started to wander away in his rest. She began to read the long and elaborate ode he had written about her. As she was reading it, her mind guided his own to follow her mental voice, and soon enough his dreams were all about her, illustrating his written words on her beauty, her might, strength, and wisdom. The poem compared her with a cactus flower at some point. What her eyes read his dreams painted, and they both saw that image of resilience. Life in the desert. Another passage described the fierceness she had on the battlefield as being the mortal embrace of a serpent, silent, sensual, deadly. But the part she loved the most was the one where it became personal, with details that only Eragon could know. Not even her was capable of telling how her own skin tasted like, or the feel of her fingernails trailing a path of fire on one's skin, or even that her smell of crushed pine needles made one's legs go numb when crawling inside one's nostrils. Eragon was the only one alive who could ever testify to its veracity, so she was sure he was overreacting. It was the only explanation for his disproportional rapture. They both woke up from their haze when he protested mentally against her judgment. To argue in his own favor, he started to recreate in their minds their most passionate moment thus far. Arya wasn't sure how awakened he was by then, or how sober, but it didn't matter. She was feeling warm enough to let the sensations flow through their bond. He was very vividly imprinting in her mind the first time they kissed. He wanted her to know that what he wrote was the truth, that she was all that. But again, he was clueless and, inadvertently, ended up showing her his reactions to her as well, not only her characteristics. He reacted to her in the memory, but in the present too, and Arya could feel his heartbeat racing in his chest like it was her own and a heat forming below his belly button. It was too much for Arya. The sound of his heavy breathing was doubled, and that marvelous sound intensified her own mimicked reactions to him. He needed to stop it, or it would eventually make her go insane. She closed the book since she wasn't looking at it for a while now, and let it slip from her hand while she grabbed the pillows under her head to steady herself. Her eyelids fell heavy and humid, contrary to her mouth that would fall open and dry. She was completely sober now. The wine had burned away from her system at that point. Eragon. She called once and realized he was deep into the memory. Eragon. Still, he didn't come out of it, which made her be sure he wasn't completely owner of himself. She would have to guide him out of there the same way she did when he had a nightmare years ago at the beach. Something was telling her this would be harder for her somehow, unless her instant of hesitation was enough for his mind to take control of hers and walk her into his slumber. Arya was gladly joining in, exploring his passionate dreamland. He let a blank space for her to fill the memory with her own impressions, and suddenly her hands weren't grasping the cloth of the couch pillows anymore, but the hair on the back of his head. His heavy breathing wasn't just a product of a distant memory, but as real as the river waters rustling outside her house. And if there was anything stronger than the perfume of her white lilies, it had to be his raw combination of wet grass and rain that she breathed directly from his burning skin under her nose. Her underbelly twitched and she gasped. A heat started between her legs. His hands started to explore her body in a way she didn't remember happening in the past, but it didn't matter. She wanted it. They went under her clothes, exploring her back and stomach, as she hoped he reached her breasts, and he finally did, leaving a trail of wanting through her skin. In response, her legs went around his waist, first one then another, in a way they didn't do in the past either, but she suspected he also didn't mind, because soon he removed his hands from under her tunic and grabbed her by the thighs, pressing her even further against the door. Another twitch. She could feel his desire rise, and it left her breathless. Eragon was panting in her mouth, and she thought she had never felt so desired before. Or had never desired anyone else before, for that matter. His lips traveled from her mouth to her jaw until it found a weakness in her defenses right there on her neck. She gasped again, what made him move between her legs, causing her another gasp and a moan. After that, repeatedly he moved against her, rippling waves of pleasure that went from her core to the tip of her toes, and she felt the door almost succumbing on her back because of the violence of his thrusts. At that moment, she cursed the restrictions of their clothes as her nails clasped the back of his shirt and her feet tried to peel his pants off, for she wanted to feel his skin on hers that she could swear would feel as hot as the summer sun. And so his name came out of her lips in all ear. In the case of it being the latter, he halted his movements and stared deep into her eyes. He looked beautiful, all surrendered like that. He was beautiful. She wished he knew that. Arya brought her hands to caress his face, and little by little she felt her breathing slowing down such as his own. She found herself being untangled from the fantasy and gaining more consciousness of her surroundings, even with her eyes still closed. The air coming from the riverbed was colder than before around her, and her knuckles hurt from holding the pillows so hard. Eragon's image was fading to black as her lower back and hips also ached, and she realized she's been arching her back for the entire interaction. Her right hand searched the back of the couch and found a blanket. Although she could feel the sweat covering her forehead and dripping from her neck and cleavage, the night breeze was throwing shivers throughout her body. Arya. Eragon called her as she turned to her side and covered herself. Yes, she could barely control her breathing, but her mental voice sounded strong. "Stay with me," he asked faintly, and she noticed his dreams had taken a drastic turn after she left their shared fantasy. He was dangerously roaming around a dark place. Immediately, she cast a starry sky over a plain, sandy beach in his mind where she lay down, holding his body tightly against hers. She whispered in his ear that she would be there for him forever. "You're safe in my arms, I promise."